Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to look at a glaring issue that is almost never openly discussed in our society: the inequality of pleasure. We constantly hear about wealth gaps or racial divides or disparities in the workplace. But today, we're uncovering a deeply uncomfortable reality about how society historically views, manages, and ultimately suppresses physical satisfaction, especially for women. And honestly, this isn't just about intimacy. As you'll see, it's a structural look at how outdated mindsets continue to have profound real-world consequences on personal autonomy and health. To really understand the scale of this, we have to start with this absolutely staggering number. According to a recent Directs India survey, 70% of Indian women are unsatisfied. 70%. This isn't just some fringe issue affecting a tiny group of people. We are talking about a massive majority of the population silently navigating a deeply rooted disparity. When 7 out of 10 people are experiencing this kind of disconnect between their biological reality and their actual lived experience, it points to a massive systemic failure. And the severity of this silence is profound. An India Today survey reveals that 45.2% of Indian females report regularly faking their orgasms. Almost half, people are literally choosing to fabricate their own satisfaction rather than rock the boat and confront the ingrained societal norms that created this gap in the first place. So, what does this all mean? Why is there such a massive divide between expectation and reality? Well, to truly get it, we actually have to take a look back and see how human history completely flipped its perspective on this very topic.
Which brings us to Section 1, the ancient paradox.
This completely blew my mind because the contrast is brilliant, but also horrifying. Today, the clitoris is viewed by many across different regions as a source of sin, leading to these cruel, painful practices of mutilation. But back in the day, ancient Indian texts openly worshipped Rati, the consort of Kamdev, and she was revered purely as the goddess of female pleasure. Think about that. Not motherhood, not childbirth, not domestic duty, just pleasure. Going from absolute reverence to systematic destruction is just staggering. And the sheer depth of their ancient scientific understanding is incredible. Mythologist Seema Anand points out that as far back as 300 BC, artisans were crafting customized pleasure toys matched specifically to female anatomy. In section 12 of the Mahabharata, there's this fascinating story of King Bangashwana. He was cursed to become a woman, but when given the choice, he actually chose to remain female, specifically claiming women experienced greater pleasure. And by the 11th century, texts like the Rati Rahasya had these incredibly complex charts tracking shifting erogenous zones from the scalp all the way down to the toes, mapped entirely to the lunar cycle. It's like a giant puzzle they had already solved. So how did we lose all that? That takes us to Section 2, the purity mindset. Seriously, how did we regress from meticulous scientific analysis to this extreme need for bodily control? Well, this viral social media post by a Jadavpur University professor pretty much hits the nail on the head. He wrote, "A virgin girl is like a sealed bottle." When educators, the literal people we trust to shape the minds of the next generation, publicly treat women as commodities, it profoundly poisons how an entire society values human autonomy. And this conditioning creates a blatant, almost laughable hypocrisy. Based on Reuters and other survey data, nearly 2/3 of men, 77%, demand a virgin bride. Okay, but here's the kicker. Of those exact same men making that strict demand, 50% admit to having visited prostitutes at least once in their lives. The double standard here is mathematically absurd. The rigid rules applied relentlessly to women clearly do not apply to the men enforcing them. And here is where we analyze how these outdated mindsets drive devastating real-world practices. You'll see advertisements in rural areas and small towns boasting slogans like "Restore your purity in just 30 minutes." These are marketing campaigns for hymen restoring surgeries. They are literally turning societal paranoia into a medical procedure, equating a fragile physical membrane directly with a person's character and morality. This fear has birthed a highly lucrative industry. Data from Apollo hospitals shows a massive 20 to 30% spike in the demand for hymenoplasty surgeries. And the vast majority of these patients are young women between 20 and 30 who are being pushed to surgically alter themselves just to fit a totally fabricated societal narrative of purity. It proves exactly how destructive this virginity obsession really is. But this outdated mindset leads to much, much darker extremes. It drives female genital mutilation, or FGM. This is the incredibly cruel practice of deliberately cutting and removing healthy female anatomy specifically to ensure a girl remains pure and free from physical desires. It's heartbreaking, and astonishingly, despite the severe physical and psychological trauma this causes, there are currently no preventative laws in India protecting young girls from this mutilation. Make no mistake, this extreme control of female anatomy is a massive, unchecked global crisis. Because of that lack of preventative laws, India is tragically becoming a global FGM hub, drawing medical tourism from countries like the US and Australia just for these mutilation procedures. In some Middle Eastern countries, vaginas are sewn shut after childbirth to deliberately prevent future pleasure. And in the UK, a highly developed nation, there were 5,000 new FGM cases registered in 2017 alone. It's happening everywhere. Let's pivot to Section 3, Everyday Lifestyle and Financial Disparities. Because this deep-seated lack of bodily agency, it doesn't just stay in the surgical ward, it bleeds right into basic everyday survival. A 2017 UN survey in Uttar Pradesh found that 85% of women cook the meals for their households, yet deeply ingrained patriarchal norms force them to eat last. They spend their entire day preparing nourishment for their families, but their own basic well-being is treated as a total afterthought. And this underlying control creates a total illusion of financial independence. While Indian Express data notes 50% of Indian women are completely financially dependent, a CNBC TV18 survey of metropolitan working women found something way more shocking. 67% of women who actively earn their own money still depend entirely on male family members to make their financial decisions. Earning a paycheck simply doesn't guarantee personal agency if the patriarchal mindset is still pulling the strings. All right, let's move to Section 4, Taking Back Personal Control. We need to return to the intimate data to explore the biological reality of this disparity. According to a Hindustan Times survey, only 50% of women can achieve an orgasm through vaginal intercourse alone. However, when combined with manual and oral stimulation, that success rate shoots all the way up to 86%. This biological reality completely explains why 72% of married Indian women report being sexually unsatisfied. The very basic mechanics of their pleasure are just being entirely ignored. And here is the truly tragic punchline to that biological data. Despite that massive potential for 86% satisfaction, only a miserable 12% of females actually receive satisfactory stimulation from their partners. 12%. The gap between what is biologically possible and what is actually happening behind closed doors is immense. So why do so many women stay silent about this? Psychologist Dr. Priyanka Shah perfectly broke down the societal trap. If an unhappy Indian woman is evaluating her marriage, she's basically conditioned to ask three basic survival questions. Is he financially stable? Is he a good father? Does he beat me? If she answers yes, yes, and no, society dictates she should be entirely grateful. She simply compromises on her own pleasure because basic survival and physical safety are treated as the absolute ceiling of what she's allowed to ask for. But listen, that dynamic has to change from within. India Today posed this brilliant challenge. If you don't ask for it, how will you get it? Women must begin communicating their desires rather than quietly faking it. You just cannot expect a partner to naturally navigate deeply ingrained societal blind spots if you aren't actively voicing your own needs and finally taking back your own agency. Which leaves us with one crucial, haunting question to wrap up this explainer. We've seen the modern surgical consequences, the hymenoplasties, the FGM, and we've explored the incredibly progressive ancient text. So, how did a society that once built magnificent temples and wrote advanced scientific manuals worshiping female pleasure become a global hub for mutilating and suppressing it? Think about how much profound history we've lost and what it will truly take to finally unlearn this massive regression. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the norms and keep learning.